We again take the nucleus of the hydrogen atom composed of a proton and a neutron as an example to explain how the nuclear force came about and how it works. Put simply, if we think of it this way, atomic nucleus is also a sovereignty system. In such a system, two bodies can interact, resulting in forces and movements. Then all mysteries about nuclear force will be solved. Suppose the nuclear force and the distance between proton and neutron in the hydrogen atom are as follows. Then the velocities of orbit of the two should be equal to the following. That would be almost exactly the same as the speed of light. Looked at the other way round, in order for the proton and neutron to be able to withstand the nuclear force between them and not collide, they have to run around each other at this speed. So it is possible that a mass body can move at the speed of light. It is interesting that with this speed the sum of the kinetic energy of proton and neutron corresponds to the energy from Einstein's equivalence of mass and energy. Theoretically, this means that if the proton and neutron are split, as much energy could be released as Einstein's equivalence suggests from the mass of the proton and neutron, but without sacrificing the mass itself. Funnily enough, such a nonsensical claim by Einstein could also be halfway correct, by accident. So the proton and neutron in the hydrogen atom run around each other at about the speed of light, and so the circle frequency would be the same as the following. This corresponds to a wavelength of approximate. This wavelength is cosmic rays. It is even shorter than gamma radiation. But we can imagine that the nucleus of a larger atom could also be a sovereignty system of two smaller nuclei. And these could also run around each other a little more slowly, so that the slightly larger wavelength could also arise, which would then be in the range of gamma rays. So considering different atoms and nuclei as different systems of sovereignty explains why there are so many different waves from infrared to cosmic rays in the universe and where they come from. What is certain is that all radiations are not conjured up and also must be able to be explained mechanically. Because the protons and neutrons revolve around each other at the speed of light, the cosmic radiation wave created by the proton and neutron could be emitted at the speed of light. The intensity of the cosmic radiation could be equal to 0 if they run in a circle around each other, or if they are not excited. Could we also imagine that the light frequency created by the electron circling around the nucleus is also irradiated, as is the case with the technology used in radio, with which the useful signal is sent by radio waves? Does this then result in an electromagnetic wave with light frequency and light speed? So is the speed of light the speed of light? If the proton and neutron formed a sovereignty system as assumed, the gravitational constant for this proton-neutron system, nuclear system, of the hydrogen nucleus would be as follows. This is only slightly larger than the Ga of the atomic system. As I said, within a sovereignty system, only below sovereignty systems can be formed if they have at least the same gravitational constants as those of the above one. This means that the core system can only just be formed under the atomic system. Therefore, it could potentially be resolved relatively easily. For example, in an atomic system whose gravitational constant is Ga, the electron orbits the nucleus. And the nucleus can be seen as a single body that interacts with the electron and itself also forms its own sovereignty system in which the proton and neutron interact with each other and has its own gravitational constant Gk, which is larger than Ga. Therefore, the proton and neutron are practically under two gravitational constants at the same time. Since the force always takes on the largest possible value, the small constant in the core system is usually ineffective. Suppose the proton's orbital velocity around the neutron is v0 and the distance between them is r0. Imagine what might happen if the distance is pulled longer by delta r by an external force. From the lunar orbit we know that when the moon is pulled by an external force from point 1 to 2 by a distance delta r, it slows down its velocity by twice the orbital velocity difference between 1 and 2. Analogously to the proton and neutron, it can be stated, if the proton is pulled outwards by delta r, its actual speed at point 2 is reduced to the following. This results in a centrifugal acceleration that is somewhat smaller than before. This reduced centrifugal acceleration of the proton is equal to the attraction acceleration of the neutron to the proton, because this is also reduced to the same extent due to the outward pulling force. If delta r is large enough, it could happen that the acceleration produced by the gravitational constant Ga exceeds Gk2. Then the gravitational constant Gk in the nuclear system is replaced by Ga and the gravitation between proton and neutron is determined by Ga, this being the gravitational constant of the Coulomb force. So the strength of the nuclear force has now become equal to the Coulomb force. In place 2, gravity in the hydrogen nucleus calculated from Ga is equal to the following. And when Ga2 is greater than Gk2, they behave like this. After simplifying this equation, we obtain this results in So if the distance between proton and neutron is increased by 0.65 10 to the power of minus 15 meter and to 2.65 10 to the power of minus 15 meter, the nuclear force could be reduced to the Coulomb force determined by Ga. Conversely, if the proton is pushed inward, its orbital velocity will always be greater than the orbital velocity because of the double orbital velocity differential effect. The resulting centrifugal force will also be greater than gravity. Then a repulsive force arises between the proton and the neutron. And the more the distance between them is reduced, the stronger this repulsive force will also be. This phenomenon is analogous to the orbit of the Moon around the Earth. When the Moon is at its perigee, it is pushed outwards on the same principle. This behavior would not have to be just for nuclear force. It is quite possible that Coulomb force also has this property. This means that if the electron circling around the nucleus were pushed inward against the nucleus, a repulsive force would also have to be created. This is also exactly the same as the mouth around the Earth or the Earth around the Sun. So as we see, the physical principles are the same in both the microscopic and cosmic worlds. Thank you very much for your attention. See you next time.